الحمد لله ثم الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونتوب إليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهد الله فهو المهتد ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن سيدنا وحبيبنا ومولانا محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. All praise is due to Allah, and after that all praise is due to Allah. We thank Him, we seek help from Him, we ask guidance in Him, and we seek forgiveness in Him from our own evils and from our own bad deeds. Anyone who has been guided by Allah, they will be guided, and anyone who has been misguided by Allah, you will never find a guardian to guide them. I bear witness, there is no deity worthy of worship except for Allah, the only one without partner, and I bear witness that Muhammad ﷺ is his servant and his messenger. Proceed forward. Before I begin the actual topic of my khutbah, I thought it'd be important to raise up a point. And sometimes, it's actually a benefit that I'm not always giving the khutbah for what I'm about to tell you right now. As I'm sitting in the audience, sometimes I notice different things. I know it doesn't happen in this khutbah, in this Jum'ah, and definitely doesn't happen when I'm speaking as the khatib. But it's really, really important for everybody to know that you shouldn't be looking at your cell phones, going on Facebook, doing all the things while the khutbah is going on. The replacement of the khutbah is actually the 2 rakat of salah for dhuhr. So it's important for us to be at least try to focus on what I'm saying, and if you don't like what I'm saying or I'm boring you, I apologize, but you stuck with me, so might as well enjoy it. Okay. That was not my sign to quit, by the way, like last time. Okay, so in my khutbah, bismillah. As we're relatively very, very early on in 2018, many people these days are very busy with putting together tasks and things, goals, and things they want to accomplish by the end of this year. And this is it's a healthy exercise, but I thought it would be appropriate as people are beginning to do this to speak about the qualities of success. The qualities of success. And because in the end, what all people are trying to do, no matter what goal you have, whether your goal is to eat healthier, to get a promotion in your job, to be better with your family, whatever it is, the ultimate goal for all of these things is success. You want to be successful at whatever the goal is that you set out to do. And that can happen whether you're young, you're old, you're a student, you're an employee, an entrepreneur, whatever it is. It could be between whether you're a Muslim or a non-Muslim. The idea is the same thing. And I do mention this on purpose because even for Muslims, the idea is success. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran, the dua, رَبَّنَا آتِينَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً. Oh Allah, give me the good of this life, success, and the good of the hereafter, which is also success. And so it's important for us, even as Muslims, to be able to look at this idea of success and be able to try to inculcate it within our lives. There's a poet in America, an American poet by the name of Richard St. John. And he was on his way to a TED conference, if you're familiar with TED Talks. So he was on his way to a TED conference, and there was a girl that was sitting on the plane with him, and she asked him, she said, what really leads to success? And he considered himself a fairly successful person. He had won a few prizes in the literature that he had written, the poems, the book that he had published on his poem. He had actually won a couple of prizes, and he thought he was a fairly successful person. He was going to the TED conference, but he couldn't answer the question. So he decided to spend the next 10 years of his life researching this topic of success and asking 500 what he felt were extraordinarily successful people in their fields, what helped them to become successful, how they define success. And so after analyzing, sorting, correlating millions of words, they came up with the most comprehensive research and the most exhaustive, organized database on the subject of success. And so what I'd like to do is really talk about what he discovered and what he called the 8 traits of successful people have in common. So 8 traits that successful people have in common. Now, as you've seen me up here today, I take real life examples and I relate them back to Islam. So obviously in this khutbah, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these 8 traits and I'm going to bring them back to a Muslim context, or bring them back to the context of the Prophet ﷺ, the companions, the Quran, those type of things. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it beneficial for everybody. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran, He said, لَقَدْ كَانَ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. Then He says that verily the messenger of Allah is the most excellent of examples. So, we have examples with him. So if there's anything that takes a long time to discover, whether it be success or other things, those type of things, probably we could find it in the messenger of Allah. And this is no different in this topic as well. But also, the Quran also mentions, it says, قَدْ كَانَتْ لَكُمْ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ فِي إِبْرَاهِيمَ وَالَّذِينَ مَعَهُ. Right, so that Ibrahim alayhi salam is also a most excellent example, and those that were with him. For who? The Prophet ﷺ, and for us as Muslims. Even Ibrahim is an example for us. And in fact, all of the messengers of Allah, all of them were an example, something to look towards for even the Prophet ﷺ. Even for the Prophet ﷺ, especially for the Muslim, the companions, and for the Muslim community. For us to do that. I mean, think about it. After the humiliation that he faced in Taif, and he was all kind of sad and stuff, what surah was revealed to the Prophet ﷺ? It was Surah Yusuf, which talks about how there's a master planner that's at work. And no matter what happens, it's all good. He's going to take care of it. That's what the message of Surah Yusuf is all about. And then you go on, and when he had very, very few followers, he kept giving the message, and he had a handful of followers, and even those handful, half of them had to migrate to Abyssinia. What was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealing at the time? He was revealing the story of Nuh alayhi salam. Why? Why Nuh alayhi salam? Because in Nuh alayhi salam we have a person, we have a messenger who delivered for 950 years. And even then he couldn't convert all of his people. There was only a handful of them. And finally Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, put all those people that were believing into a ship, and it will destroy everybody else. Right? If you look at it from a worldly perspective, that's failure. From a worldly perspective, for 950 years, if you can't get something right, something might be wrong from a worldly perspective. But for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's not about the numbers. We'll get into that a little bit later. And then, when he moved to Medina, we have different stories of Musa alayhi salam and all the other ones that helped him while he was in Medina itself. So what I'd like to do, as I mentioned, is, and you can Google this video itself, you can listen to it, it's only 3 minutes to do that. But I'd like to go through each one of these 8 qualities, and then try in my best attempt to be able to relate them back to Islam. I'm sure you can come up with many, many different examples. And I'm also sure there's many successful people here in the Jummah today as well. So you might have some of your own examples, or you might be able to give other life stories that I might not be able to, because I'm still 20 years old. I'm still waiting for the rest of my life to proceed. So number 1, passion. So when I think of passion, right, I think of Mus'ab ibn Umair. So Mus'ab ibn Umair he was one of the richest, spoiled kids in Mecca before he became a Muslim. He was rich. I mean, his family was very wealthy. In fact, what they said was that he never wore the same clothing twice. He never wore it. In fact, once he used to wear it, when he was done with it that day, he used to give it away. That's how wealthy he was. But when he became a Muslim, his parents cut him off from any kind of wealth, and that type of thing. And he was living in poverty. And he didn't care, because he had passion for the religion. He had passion for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and for the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so he had so much passion that the Prophet, now he's a young man, okay? There's other older people that are there during the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in Mecca. But the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam appointed him to go to Medina as an ambassador to be able to call people for Islam before the Prophet ﷺ went to Medina. Right? That's how much the Prophet ﷺ believed in Mus'ab ibn Umair. And we're talking about passion in the Battle of Uhud. Right? He only had one cloth when he was martyred at the Battle of Uhud. And the story relates that if you took that one cloth, remember this person had all the cloth in the world. He had new cloth every single day. But when he died as a Muslim, he died with one piece of cloth. And they said that when he died, if you covered his head, his feet would show. And if you covered his feet, his head would show. That's all he was left with in this world. But he didn't care, because he had love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he had love for the Messenger. He had love for the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he didn't care about anything else that was going on. And if you look at it, when you have passion, money doesn't matter, right? There's one time somebody told me, it was when I was even younger than I am today. They said, if you love what you do, you will never work a day in your life. Let's think about that for a second. If you love salah, it's never a burden. If you love to fast, it's never a burden for you. You love to do it. You're going to do it no matter what happens. And so that's passion. When you have love for something, you have passion towards it. And so if you look at the messengers, all of them, they never did it for the money. They never did it for anything except for they had passion for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In fact, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala over and over in the Quran, He mentions this. He says, وَمَا أَسْأَلُكُمْ عَلَيْهَا مِنْ أَجْرٍ إِلَّا أَجْرٍ لِرَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. That we, no reward do I ask of you, no reward do I ask you for it. My reward is only with the Lord of the worlds. Right? That's what they were asking for. And this is over and over. Every messenger said that to their people. I'm not in it for the money. The Prophet ﷺ, he was offered a kingship. He was offered all of the money of Arabia at the time. And he didn't take it. Why? Because his focus was on the companions' focus was not on the money. They had a passion that we need to develop within our own lives. That was number one. Number two, hard work. And when I think about hard work, what I think about is the Battle of Khandaq. And I think of the Battle of Khandaq because, everybody that was there in Medina, and I don't have time to go over the entire story. Obviously, this is a khutbah, not a lecture or a class. But in the Battle of Khandaq, when they had to ditch, the Battle of the Ditch, when they had to build the ditch, every single companion that was there during the time of the Prophet ﷺ was participating in building it. Right? And there was lack of food, there was lack of water, there was all of those things were happening, but they did it anyway. It was hard work they took. And in fact, the Prophet ﷺ himself went down into the ditch and also did work along with the companions themselves. Another thing that I mentioned earlier about Nuh alayhi salam, how much hard work does it take for 950 years? I'm going to be mentioning Nuh alayhi salam over and over again. But how much hard work do you think it takes for 950 years to be able to deliver the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? How much hard work does it actually take? When the reality of man is that when they look at something that's beautiful, when they look at successful, all of those things, they never look at what it took for the person or that thing to get there. Let me give you an example. A diamond. A diamond, when you look at it, you're like, wow, subhanAllah, that's so beautiful. But do you know how much intense heat and pressure it took? For how many years it took to be able to make that diamond out of the iron ore that was created from? Right? When you look at successful people, and if you watch any movie about any successful people, you realize that for them, right, because dunya is all they have, for them, they had to sacrifice their family, they had to sacrifice their kids, they had to sacrifice everything to be able to make themselves successful. It wasn't just, they're just sitting back and all of a sudden something drops from the sky. They had to put work behind it. And that's the whole idea, is that you have to, in order to be successful, you have to put work behind whatever it is that you do. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that Islam, the Muslims, you're not going to have it easy. When you accept this religion, that's when the true trial will start. And that's what we have to understand when we're talking about the subject. Imam Shafi'i said that if you want knowledge, be prepared for poverty. If you want knowledge, be prepared for poverty. That's the hard work that he was talking about. The Quran is constantly encouraging the Prophet ﷺ and the Muslims to strive hard in the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In Surah An-Kabut, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions this, and those who strive in our cause, we will certainly guide them to our paths, for verily Allah is with those who do right. And in the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, he says, indeed, Allah loves the one of you that does his work to the best. That does his work to the best. Hard work and passion. Number 3, be great at what you do. Whatever it is that you do, be great at it. And when I think about greatness, right, in the companions, I think about Khalid ibn Walid. It takes three things to become great at what you do. Right? It takes practice. It takes practice. And guess what? It takes practice. That's all it takes to become good. Keep doing it over and over again. But you have to be great at whatever it is that you're actually doing. You know, imagine for a second, right, that there was this Qurayshi man. You know, like nowadays you say, you know, if you want to name some very far off place in the middle of nowhere, you say Timbuktu, right? It's like, where is this place? It's from Timbuktu. You know what they used to say during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, the Romans and the Byzantines and the Persians? They say, oh, that's from Arabia. So imagine a person from Arabia being able to come up and not having any military training like the armies of the Byzantines and the Persians, and he was able to basically destroy or defeat the two largest armies in the world at that time. In fact, his military strategy was so good that even till today, Sandhurst, West Point, and all of the top elite military academies, they still study the military tactics of Khalid ibn Walid. Be great at what you do. We have examples of this over and over again in the life of the Prophet ﷺ and in the companions as well. Number 4 is focus. You have to focus on whatever it is that you're doing. Do one thing, but do it great. Right? There's a saying that says the jack of all trades is expert at none. We're not looking to be jack of all trades. All we have to do is focus on one thing that we do great. So a lot of times some people come to me and say, you know what, I'm really torn between doing my work for professionally and for doing things for Islam. First of all, it's not a choice. Right? But even if it was a choice, at a very, very early age, probably in college or a little bit as soon as you start off in your life, and this is something that you have to do within yourself. Nobody else can answer this question. You're going to know whether you have potential or not to become great as a person in this life. Whether you can be successful with money, successful with fame, or those type of things. If you can't do it, if you know you're not that 1% that's going to do it, then dedicate your life to doing okay with your work, and then being great at da'wah, great at knowledge, doing all of those other things. But if you think you are that 1%, then if you do other things besides doing what you do for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then you're doing yourself and even the community a disservice. Why do I say that? Because if it wasn't for the most successful people, the wealthiest Muslims in the world, we wouldn't have the benefits we have today. Right? The people who are very wealthy businessmen, right? They're not the ones that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gifted with doing da'wah. They're not the ones that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gifted maybe with leading the salah. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gifted them with a business mind. And so when they earn their money, they give it fi sabilillah. If you look at Abdul Rahman ibn Auf, who was a very, very wealthy person, right? He didn't do everything great. He did that one thing great, which was to be able to go out there and make money so that he could give it in the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that is something that I wanted to mention. And the one of the companions that I wanted to mention when it talks about doing focusing, right, is that of Hassan ibn Thabit. Now Hassan ibn Thabit was the poet of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? And as he was a poet, as most people that are in the arts are, he wasn't a warrior. And he wasn't known for one. In fact, during the Battle of Khandaq, when the older people, the children, when the Prophet ﷺ made them retreat into a fortress, guess who was the only young person that was there with them? It was Hassan bin Thabit. Because his forte, his expertise was not in the sword. His expertise was in the tongue. And so, because of that, Abdullah ibn Zubair related by Imam Ahmad, Abdullah ibn Zubair said the women and the children were put in a fortress along with Hassan. He was not brave, meaning that he couldn't even hold a sword. It said he would tremble whenever he would do that. That wasn't his forte. But he was great at whatever he did, which was being the poet of the Prophet ﷺ. And he was excellent at doing that. So I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us of those who have qualities of success for both this life and the hereafter. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر لكم واستغفر. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. As-salatu was-salam ala ashraf al-anbiya'i wal-mursaleen Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So we talked about four out of the 8 qualities of success that you find amongst most, if not all, successful people. Now I mentioned that the American poet Mr. St. John did an exhaustive study of studying the 500 most successful people that he could find. And based on that, he came up with these 8 qualities that I've been talking about today in this khutbah. And I'm talking about them because it's very, very important as Muslims that we don't sacrifice this life for the hereafter. That's not our goal. Or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would not have given us the dua for give us good in this life and the good in the hereafter. It can be both. And if you don't get it, alhamdulillah, perfectly fine. But if you do get it, alhamdulillah, perfectly fine. But we have to be able to strive for it, the good in this life and the good in the hereafter. To be successful people. To be successful people. I mean, if there was no goal, then how could the Muslim empire be what the Muslim empire was? If people just said, you know what, I'm just going to sit in my house and I'm just going to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It wouldn't have worked. And most of the people in Malaysia, in Pakistan, in India, they would never become Muslim. Islam would have been something that was confined to the Arabian Peninsula for time immemorial. So what I mentioned earlier, the 4 qualities that I mentioned earlier, and I'll talk about the 4 next qualities. The ones I mentioned were passion, that you have to love what you do. Number 2 is hard work, that nothing comes easy, that you have to be able to not only love it, but you have to be able to sacrifice for it. Being great at what you do, meaning that you have to keep practicing over and over and over again at whatever it is that you're doing. And the last of the 4 that I mentioned earlier was focus. Do one thing, but do it greatly. Do one thing and do it greatly, whatever it is that you want to be able to do. Number 5, if you have to be able to push yourself. You have to push yourself. You know, through shyness and through self-doubt, the Prophet ﷺ was a very, very shy man. He was a very, very shy man, and yet he pushed himself to deliver the message of Islam. If you think about it, he was at the very beginning of his prophethood, right? There was insecurity. When he was given the revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through Jibreel alayhi salam, what is the first thing that he did? He went to Khadija and he said, Zambiluni. I mean, you know, I don't know what just happened. And I don't know if I'm a madman or not. Right? This is insecurity. But through that, he pushed through that insecurity. He pushed through with it, and he became the greatest messenger known to mankind. So you have to be able to push yourself into your uncomfortable zones. And when you do that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bless you. And when He blesses you, all you can have is success. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses us, all we can have is success. It doesn't matter what it is. All we can have is success. And so this is something we have to keep in mind. And then, so this idea of pushing yourself, right, is one of the things that causes us not to be able to do that, is the fear of failure. Now the fear of failure is only from shaitan. The fear of failure is only from shaitan. Because what happens when you think about failure? You think about loss of your job, you think of loss of your career, loss of your, maybe your reputation, but all of those things, you have a loss of this and loss of that and loss of that. That fear is all boiling down to that you're going to lose money. That you're going to lose. I don't want to do this business venture because I think I'm going to lose it. I don't want to do this because I think I'm going to lose. Losing, failure, losing. This is all from shaitan. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran, He says, Ash-shaytan yu'idukum bil-faqr. That shaitan threatens you with poverty. Shaitan threatens us with poverty. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala later on in the ayah says, Wallahu ya'idukum bi-maghfiratum minhum wa fadl. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promises you forgiveness from Him and bounty. Now, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is promising us forgiveness, what is it that we can't do in this world? What is failure if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to give us the bounty and He's going to give us the success? What is failure? Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bless us for whatever it is that we do, as long as obviously it's halal. But if we have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on our side, who else can we, why are we scared to do anything if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with us? Number 6, service of others. Now I'll quickly go through these. The service of others. When you have success, don't forget the people that are below you. When you're climbing that corporate ladder, don't forget about the people that are still climbing. Because no matter what happens, you didn't do it by yourself. I don't care if you were the poorest person in the world and you had no help whatsoever, you did not do it by yourself. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was there, right there with you. That He is Ar-Razaq, He's the one that's giving the sustenance. That whatever success you have, you only have it because of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when you have it, you have to be able to give back. And the story that comes to mind, and again, I'll quickly go over this. This is during the time of Umar ibn Khattab. I won't tell you what during the time was. Umar ibn Khattab, always was in competition with Abu Bakr. And that's, in the Quran is very healthy. It says, فَاسْتَبِقُوا الْخَيْرَاتِ. We vie with each other for good. So there was an old blind woman that was used to live outside of Medina. And so Umar decided he was going to go help her. So he went in the middle of the night when nobody else was watching, and he went to her and he said, he knocked on the door, she opened the door, and he said, is there anything that I can do to help you? Can I cook for you? Can I clean for you? Can I do anything? She said, no. There was another man who came, and he cooked for me. And so I was like, wow, subhanAllah. Then the next time he came again. And then again the next time, very in the middle of the night, he came, when it's dark, nobody can see him. He knocked on this woman's door again. He said, is there anything that I can do to help you? She said, no. There's another person who came, and he was able to take care of everything that I had. The third night, he decided that he was going to go early and hide behind something to see who is this person that was helping. And so when he hid behind this one thing, lo and behold, he saw the Amir al-Mu'mineen, Abu Bakr, the leader of the believers. This is like bigger than President Trump, bigger than President Obama, bigger than Prime Minister Najib, all of these things. He saw the Amir al-Mu'mineen walking towards his woman's house in the middle of the night to ask her what it is that he can do for her. You have to be able to give back, serve other people to be able to get benefit from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Number 7, ideas. You have to have creative ideas. When the Prophet ﷺ was at Badr, right, and he decided to have a stratagem of war, one of the companions stood up and he said, Ya Rasulullah, is this a stratagem from you or from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Why was he asking the question? Because if it was from you, I have some nasiha for you, I have some advice for you. But if it's from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, khalas, it's done. I don't want to say anything after that. And the Prophet said, no, this is from me. This is my stratagem of what I want to do. And then he recommended to him a certain thing that turned out to be better than the stratagem that the Prophet ﷺ had. Ideas, you have to be able to come up with them. Either you come up with them yourself, or you surround yourself with people who can come up with them. In the Battle of the Ditch, whose idea was the Battle of the Ditch? It was Salman al-Farsi, the Salman the Persian, who told the Prophet, in Persia, this is what they do. And so I think we should do it here. And the Prophet said, yes, alhamdulillah, let's do it. And so then they began to dig the ditch. Ideas, we have to have them ourselves, or surround ourselves with people that can do that. The last one is persistence. Persistence, that you have to keep working and not accept defeat. Right? You have to be able to keep working. Success is not in numbers. Success is not in numbers, but what's important is, what is it weighty in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this, of course, I come back to the story of Nuh alayhi salam, Noah, and that success for him. I mean, if you think about anybody who was persistent for 950 years to give da'wah with the success that he had, you can't talk to anybody else about persistence except for Nuh alayhi salam. Think about that, 950 years. And so the word for persistence in Islam is sabr. Right? Sabr. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions about sabr. He says, Inna Allah ma'as sabirin, that Allah is with those who are persistent and patient. So this is the word for sabr, and I'll close with this. The word for sabr itself actually comes from the root, is from the same thing as a cactus. A cactus in the middle of the desert is there. And it just waits for the rain, not like here in Malaysia, rain for 36 hours. In the desert, it just waits for rain, right? All it's doing is waiting. It has patience for the rain to come, and then when the rain comes, it stores it inside of itself. And then what the persistent part is that it doesn't just wait there and then die. It basically, inside of the cactus, there's constantly movement. There's saving of the water, there's spending of the water, there's everything that's going on inside. But the outside, when you look at it, all you see is that thing is just standing there, being patient. So it's both persistence and patience that we have to have, and that is the meaning of sabr. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Inna Allah ma'as sabirin. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, make us of those who have sabr.